I bought 600 acres of raw Texas ranch land. What the seller forgot to mention: 73 houses were already built on it, an entire HOA community living on my land using my road. So when their board tried to sue me off my own property, I found the one thing they never checked: the exit. Before we go any further, I want to know where you're watching HOA breakpoints from. Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you haven't subscribed to HOA breakpoints yet, this is your last chance. Hit that subscribe button now, because the next story only gets crazier from here. My name's Daniel, and 2 years ago I closed on what I thought was an empty 600-acre ranch outside a small Texas county. I wanted horses, quiet, maybe a cabin. Instead, when I drove out to walk the property line for the first time, I found something that made me stop the truck in the middle of a dirt road. Houses, dozens of them, neat roof lines, mailboxes, a community sign that read Whispering Pines Estates, a private HOA community. 73 homes built on land that, according to my deed, belonged to me. I later learned the developer who sold these lots years ago never actually owned the full parcel. He'd carved out a planned community on paper, built the homes, collected dues, and quietly went bankrupt before finishing the annexation paperwork. The land under and around those houses reverted to the original ranch title. My title. Nobody caught it until I did. I wasn't trying to start a war. I just wanted to understand what I actually owned. 3 days after I started asking questions at the county recorder's office, 4 SUVs pulled into my driveway. The HOA board, a man named Gerald, who introduced himself as president, 2 board members, and their attorney stood on my porch and told me, calmly, that I needed to stay out of community affairs. I said, "This isn't your community's land. It's mine." Gerald laughed. Actually laughed. He said the HOA had de facto rights to the road, the drainage easement, even the water line, because they'd been using it for 11 years. He said if I tried anything, they'd bury me in legal fees before I even understood what hit me. That's the moment this stopped being a misunderstanding. That's the moment it became personal. Because what Gerald didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the single road connecting Whispering Pines Estates to the state highway ran directly through the middle of my ranch. Every single one of those 73 houses had exactly one way in and one way out. I'm going to pause here because in about 4 minutes I'm going to tell you exactly how I legally shut down that road and the look on Gerald's face when it happened. But first, you need to understand why I was allowed to do it. Because this part is the whole game. I spent the next 2 weeks with a real estate attorney combing through 60 years of county records. What we found was almost unbelievable. The original developer had recorded an access easement pending final subdivision approval that was never granted. The easement had a legal expiration clause tied to a construction deadline. That deadline had passed 9 years earlier. Translation: the road wasn't a public right-of-way. It wasn't a permanent easement. It was a temporary privilege that had quietly expired and nobody had renewed it, because nobody was supposed to still be using it. Legally, those 73 homeowners had been driving across my land for almost a decade with zero enforceable right to do so. Before I could even file anything, the HOA's attorney beat me to it. I got served on a Tuesday morning. The Whispering Pines Estates H.O.A. was suing me for interference with established access rights and harassment of residents. Gerald had gone to the local paper calling me the out-of-town buyer trying to trap 73 families. Overnight, I became the villain in my own county. But here's the thing about lawsuits: they force everything into daylight. Once this was in a courtroom, the H.O.A.'s attorney had to actually produce the legal basis for their claim. And when the judge asked to see the original recorded easement documents, there was a long, uncomfortable silence in that courtroom. Because the paperwork Gerald swore existed didn't. Now here's the part you've been waiting for. Because while their lawsuit was tied up in discovery, I wasn't just sitting still. I filed for and legally obtained an official ruling confirming the expired easement and the immediate right to control access on my own property. 2 weeks later, I had a contractor install a gated checkpoint exactly where my land began, the only physical route in or out of Whispering Pines Estates. I didn't block it permanently. I wasn't trying to trap anyone. I installed a keypad gate and sent a certified letter to every single homeowner, effective immediately. Driving across my private ranch required a signed access agreement with a modest, legally justified usage fee and an acknowledgement that the HOA board had zero authority to negotiate on residents' behalf, since it was the board's own negligence that caused this. For 1 week, 73 households had to call me directly to get a temporary pass just to get to work, to school, to the grocery store. It became the biggest story that small county had seen in years. Local news showed up at my gate. Homeowners split into 2 camps: furious residents who blamed Gerald for the mess he'd hidden from them for years, and a smaller group who, once they understood the actual legal history, admitted the HOA board had lied to keep dues flowing. Gerald tried to spin it publicly one more time, calling me vindictive. But when a local reporter asked him directly, on camera, whether the HOA had ever actually held a valid easement, he had no answer. That clip ended his presidency within the month. The lawsuit against me was dismissed. Not settled, dismissed, because there was no valid legal claim to begin with. Instead, it flipped. My attorney and I negotiated directly with the newly elected HOA board, the residents this time, not Gerald. We drew up a permanent, properly recorded easement this time, with fair compensation to me as the actual landowner, and legal protections for both sides going forward. Those 73 families still live there today. They still use that road every single day. But now, it's on paper, it's legal, and it's fair to everyone, including me. Here's what this whole ordeal taught me. An HOA's confidence isn't the same as an HOA's legality. Gerald was loud, aggressive, and absolutely certain he was untouchable right up until the paperwork proved otherwise. If you enjoyed this one, you need to see what happened when a different HOA tried to fine a widow $40,000 for the color of her mailbox and what she found buried in their own bylaws. That story's coming next, right here on HOA Breakpoints. Subscribe now so you don't miss it.